Continuing with Flood Safety Awareness Week, we discuss flood safety. The photo in the background of this slide is a flash flood produced by a severe thunderstorm that affected Williston, Vermont on June 29, 2005. Here in the North Country, flooding is a hazard that presents a risk year-round. It is historically Vermont's top weather hazard in terms of losses. 2011 in particular included many high-impact flood events, including extensive flooding from Tropical Storm Irene, overland lakeshore flooding along Lake Champlain as it reached record-high stage levels, an extreme flash flood event that affected Barre and Montpelier in late May. Other significant historical events include the extreme ice jam flooding in Montpelier in March 1992, which flooded much of downtown Montpelier. Flooding reaches its climatological peak during late winter into early spring. Snowmelt combined with rainfall events leaves Vermont and northern New York potentially prone to flooding. Since flooding is a risk that can occur at any time of the year, its characteristics cover a wide spectrum of time and space scales, including short-duration flash flooding, river and ice jam flooding, a gradual water rise produced by prolonged periods of rain, and overland lake flooding. Advanced preparation before flooding occurs remains one of the best safety strategies. The first couple of slides will talk about some basic preparedness strategies before flooding occurs, followed by some situational safety guidelines when flooding becomes a more imminent threat. Being aware of your surroundings and environment is the best way to assess your personal flood risk. Do you live along the floodplain of an adjacent river or lake? Living on a floodplain increases your risk for flooding. Floodplain areas tend to expand with each flooding event. Plan on taking a hike in the mountains? Be cognizant of the danger of mudslides and valley flooding. As with most weather hazards, developing an emergency plan in advance is a key in hazard mitigation. Often, flooding offers little advance warning, so it's important to develop an emergency plan and an emergency kit well before flooding develops. The emergency kit should include items to keep you alive for several days, including bottled water, non-perishable food, a flashlight, first aid kit, a 7-day supply of medications, cell phones, copies of personal documents such as birth certificates and home insurance policies, and a battery-powered radio. Check to see if you are eligible to apply for the National Flood Insurance Program, especially if you live in a floodplain. Purchasing a flood insurance policy can be a wise investment in the event of major damage to your property, as most homeowners' insurance policies don't cover flood losses. You can visit the Flood Smart website listed on the slide for more information on the National Flood Insurance Program. Be aware of the weather forecast and know the distinction between a watch and a warning, which prompt differing public responses. Flood watches and flash flood watches are issued when flooding may present itself within 36 hours. These products raise awareness that flooding or flash flooding may occur. When watches are issued, the public is asked to simply prepare for the risk of flooding and act accordingly if an immediate flood threat emerges. This includes making sure that their own emergency plans and emergency kits are in place, and to monitor our office webpage, TV or radio broadcasts, and NOAA weather radio for flood or flash flood warnings. If flooding or flash flooding is expected or is already happening for a specific area or river basin, flood or flash flood warnings will be issued. Warnings contain specific information about the affected geographic area, which may include portions of cities, towns, rivers, and roadways, what type of flooding is occurring, and a short-range forecast of what is predicted to occur. Sometimes these products contain impact information that can help users better understand what kind of impacts may take place. These are based on historical flood events that have happened in the past. Any flood warnings should be treated as potentially dangerous and life-threatening, however. Flood statements and flash flood statements are used to update information in the initial respective flood or flash flood warning. For example, if more information becomes available and/or if changes to the flooding risk become necessary. Here's an example of a flash flood warning that was issued on May 29, 2012. With some exceptions, most NWS severe weather flood warnings tend to follow a similar format. Since time can be of the essence in warning situations, we'll step through some of the warning text so you can quickly and more decisively take necessary actions. Warning text will first contain information on what type of warning is being issued and for which parts of the counties are included in the specific warning. What time the warning is in effect until will follow. Next, we have the warning basis portion. Generally, this contains what, when, from where, and why. In other words, information that prompted the warning. You'll also see some selected locations in the warning, including cities, towns, or other geographic references that may be familiar or recognizable. Finally, you'll see what are called call to action statements, which are actions that should be taken to protect your life and property. Sometime later, a flash flood statement is issued as new information about previously issued flash flood warning becomes available. Here's a follow-up to the previous flash flood warning we saw in the previous slide. So what does this product contain? It contains some information about the previous warning status. Is it a continuation or an expiration? New or additional information pertinent to the warning then follows. In this case, you can see that some of our weather spotters reported flash flooding on specific highways, an estimation of rainfall that has fallen and is expected to fall through the rest of the warning time, and the potential impact this might have on the Middlebury River headwater area. A cancellation flash flood statement will include information regarding why the warning is being canceled. Finally, you'll note an additional call to action section if the product is a continuation of a previous warning. Now we'll present some situational safety information that can help you protect your life and property. Regardless of the situation, the simplest safety recommendation is to stay away from floodwaters. Besides the power of flowing water, other indirect hazards such as potential water contamination and large debris in the floodwaters pose dangers. Water in homes may also become electrified, which poses another hazard. Thus, if you are in a home, you and your family should move to higher ground. Heed the call to evacuate if local authorities mandate evacuations. Mobile homes and campers are also unsafe in flood events, and the threshold to evacuate may be lower for those in these situations. The photo in the bottom right was from a significant flood event near Ellenburg Depot, New York, between August 2nd and August 4th, 2010. Water rescues had to be enacted for several citizens during this event. The catchphrase, "Turn around, don't drown," applies to situations involving floodwaters and vehicles. Take a look at the photo on this slide. How deep would you judge the floodwaters to be? The answer? There is no way of knowing what the depth of the water is, even if the roadbed itself is intact, which also isn't known. Some facts about the force of water on vehicles. For every foot of water rise, water that is moving between 6 and 12 miles per hour will exert a lateral force of 500 to 700 pounds on a medium-sized car or SUV. A foot of water surrounding an average-sized vehicle makes it 1,500 pounds lighter in effect. This means it becomes much easier for vehicles to become buoyant in floodwaters. The flood risk is enhanced even more at night and or in poorly lit areas. Simply put, turn around, don't drown. Driving into floodwaters is too risky a proposition to attempt, even in large vehicles. To follow up on the dangers of driving in floodwaters, here is a pie chart that shows what activities all U.S. flood victims in 2013 were doing. It clearly shows the disproportionately high number of flood fatalities while driving in a vehicle when compared to the other activities. Recreational activities such as walking also encompass a fairly significant percentage of flood fatalities. We'll touch upon recreational flood safety in the following slide. We present a few outdoor flood safety rules here. First, ensure that you have some way of obtaining critical weather information, such as a battery-powered NOAA weather radio. In isolated rural locations, it may be impossible to get a signal from mobile sources like a smartphone to search for weather information. Be situationally aware to additional weather threats besides flooding, particularly during the summer and spring months. Narrow mountain passes, valleys, and canyons are unsafe places to be during floods. The photo on this slide shows floodwaters from the historic Big Thompson Canyon, Colorado flood in 1976. Water from elevated terrain can fill and flow much faster through narrow passages such as valleys, which significantly reduce your reaction time. If hiking or camping, make sure that tents are pitched on high ground. Boating, kayaking, or swimming on bodies of water that are flooding are very risky propositions. Besides the force of water, its deceptive speed, debris in the floodwaters, and potential water contamination are other related threats to boaters, kayakers, and swimmers. Be aware that river or lake levels can be elevated for several days after a flood or flash flood event. Thanks for watching this presentation on flood safety and preparedness. For more information, visit us on the web at www.weather.gov/Burlington, like us on Facebook, or follow us on Twitter at NWS Burlington.